Good morning. I'm State Representative Ray Pryor, and here with me today is State Representative Dan Stewart, the joint sponsor of our victims' rights legislation, and State Representative John Carney, also working with us on the legislation. And John is going to make another presentation here shortly. I'd like to mention some of our partners that are in the room working with us on this legislation, and those are Mothers Against Drunk Driving and the Ohio Crime Victims Association are both here today, and we appreciate their coming out this morning and being with us. This is Crime Victims' Rights Month, the month of April, nearly over now, but we did get this in the appropriate month, and it's a very, very important month for me personally, and we'll talk about that just a little bit later. But I'd like to talk about the victims' legislation that we have brought forward that will be introduced, and legislation that strengthens the victims' rights here in the state of Ohio and strengthens the support that we in the state of Ohio can provide to our crime victims. It strengthens in regards to the notification process for notifying crime victims of proceedings, not only during the trial process, but also the process involving parole hearings, appeals, and other proceedings, early release from correctional facilities, etc. There's a number of different things that we can address in that area. It strengthens the victim's rights in being involved in the trial process. The legislation would make amendments to allow not just one family member, for instance, to provide an impact statement, but other persons that are affected and relevantly affected by the crime. I'm going to give you an example there. In 2001, I was able to provide a crime victim's impact statement at a trial for a drunk driver that killed my mother and my twin brother. My other family members at that point were not allowed to provide an impact statement, and they very well should have been allowed to provide that statement. So this is something that is very near and dear to me, and I think maybe part of the reason that the Ohio Crime Victims Association and my good friend Andrea Raycamp brought this piece of legislation to my office and asked us to consider bringing them forward. The legislation also deals with the restitution for monetary loss to victims. This bill deals with the restitution by the offender, not by the state of Ohio necessarily, upon conviction for the crime. You know, why do we need the legislation? We live in a society that is concerned with criminal rights and court processes that protect the rights of those who are on trial for a crime. This is the way it should be. We should also be concerned with the rights of victims. You know, we need to protect the rights of the person that is charged with the crime. We don't want to put innocent people in prison. We want them to have the due process and the rights that they deserve. But we also want the crime victims to have their rights. And we need to be concerned with treating the victims of crime fairly and with compassion. Victims don't have attorneys present in the courtroom to represent them. Yes, there may be civil suits later on, but when it comes to the criminal offense or the criminal charge in the trial, they're not represented in the courtroom. Some people say that the prosecutor represents the crime victim. In reality, the prosecutor represents the county, the state, the community. Victims quite often are not notified of motions and pleadings and delays in the trial. An example, in my case, the trial drug on for 2 years. Many times I would show up for a pre-trial hearing or a motion hearing to find out that it was canceled and that I had made the trip to the courthouse for no reason. Very important issue. Crime victims need to be aware of these type of things, and we need to make every effort to make that contact and provide those services, those support for those crime victims. But what about after the conviction? Victims are quite often going through emotional distress. You know, we talk about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, for our military veterans. What about in the case of a person who saw his mother and his twin brother die at the hands of a drunk driver? I will tell you that post-traumatic stress disorder is there. And I will tell you that quite often in these types of settings, the victim is in need of counseling, emotional, mental counseling, to help cope with those types of issues. And victims do have the responsibility of keeping the courts, the prosecutors, corrections informed of their whereabouts and their contact information. But we, in the court systems, the prosecutors' offices, the corrections offices, have the responsibility to make that effort to get in touch with those crime victims when there is a process taking place that can affect them, can affect the offender that the court system has convicted. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to introduce State Representative Dan Stewart.